Who's paying for these protests and why they're being allowed may be tomorrow for some other shows, but it's now and every night for us here. I'm Chris Cuomo. Everyone seems to see what they want to in these college protests. Too many are using them to advance their own agendas. But this is too important to play games. It is a time to say what you are about, what you think about what is happening, why it's happening, and what you believe must be done now. Look, tonight, here, you're going to hear people play to advantage with these protests, but they will be tested. This is not some fake impeachment effort. This is not some political prosecution. Kids are being radicalized in a way that poses a true national security threat. This isn't my opinion. This was the warning given months ago by the head of the FBI, and he was right. So who is paying for these protests? Who is planting all this BS on social media that is absorbed uniquely by who? Younger people, the same ones protesting. Who will step up and make the case and expose the malignancy and assure Jewish Americans that they too are valued and safe? I don't see the arrests and skirmishes as a spectacle to get your attention. I may be kept late tonight to watch it. I don't know that it's the best use of our time. What do you think is going to happen when people are illegally occupying areas on a private property? What do you think is going to happen? Do we want to watch for abuse? Yeah. How easy is it to control this? Why did the campus wait so long? Why did they then make it the police's problem? Symptoms of diseased radicalization that was all but embraced by the same campuses that now don't know what to do. You knew what to do when you were allowing it to foment. And I'm not the only one who feels this way. UCLA canceled classes today because they're out of control. The protests turned violent. You had counter-protesters come. How long did you think that people were going to allow a parallel city to be built in the name of Palestinians? And everything about it is at best implicitly anti-Israel. And for a small slice, overtly pro-Hamas. So police were late because they were asked late, and they moved in with riot gear because they've got to be kept safe too. The school was weak and lost control. You allow this, you empower it. And now the kids are calling the shots. When you know that they are trying to portray themselves as suffering Gazans, what do you expect when you choose to placate instead of place limits? The school is bent over to accommodate the protesters. Now here's the problem. Some, not all, not even most, okay? But there is a noisy, vicious some, a minority, just like in our poison party politics. A small slice of fringe magnified by the media, espousing radical Islamist allegiance, calling for intifada. They are driving the dynamic. In the main, these kids are here to protest the suffering. It is right for them to do so in an American democracy. Whether or not you believe their opinions are right is subjective. It's up to you. But the dynamic is out of control, and that's why Jewish kids at several campuses are terrified. And they deserve to be safe and to be comforted. They are not complicit in some type of Israeli offensive. They are Americans going to school. So who's going to step up? Should be Congress, right? The campuses have capitulated. They're done. We are desperate for leaders to step up. What do we get instead? Dueling bills instead of cooperation. You can't come together to agree on what's anti-Semitism. Even this has to be played to advantage. We have a member of the Oversight Committee who toured the pro-Palestine encampments at the George Washington University in Washington, D.C. They've grown since last week. The member is Florida Representative Byron Donalds. Brave for him to go. Why did he go? What did he see? What is he going to do about what he saw.
How much is AIPAC paying you, you race traitor?
Race traitor? What?
Yeah. Uncle Tom?
Why the United States is supporting a Jewish supremacist country?
Outside agitators aren't allowed. You're working for a foreign entity, you bastard.
It's interesting. Not the AIPAC thing. You'll hear that all the time. A race traitor to a black man in America. You see what these people are trying to make this about. Congressman wasn't having it. But what's he going to do? Byron Donalds joins us now. You did a good job keeping your cool. I know that was way over the line and struck at something that actually matters to you. Why did you go?
Well, I wanted to go and actually see firsthand what was happening at George Washington University here in Washington, D.C. We were informed by the administration that they had requested the Metropolitan Police Department to help them clear the encampment because the encampment is on university grounds. It is clear trespassing at this point. And they wanted to make sure that was cleared for the students who were trying to finish their exams, study, and get all their work done before their semester is over. Mayor Bowser has refused to release the Metropolitan Police Department to help George Washington clear the encampment because this is, like I said before, it's trespassing. The Oversight Committee, we do have oversight over the activities of the District of Columbia, including all their policies and procedures. We passed legislation around one of their reforms to the criminal code, and we passed legislation which was signed by Joe Biden to reverse course on what D.C. had done. So Congress has oversight over the matters of Washington. This is something that is impacting the students at George Washington University, and the core message is encouraging Mayor Bowser to step up and support the president of George Washington and the administration. They want to get the campus back under control.
Who's the bad guy? Because, as we both know, protesting for the cause, signature part of American democracy, being pro-Palestinian, there's nothing evil about that, and seeing the suffering there. To you, where do you see the line, and who's crossing it, and how?
Two things. First, when you are impeding the activities of the university and other students, that's where you cross the line. Nobody has a problem with free speech and protesting. That is as American as apple pie. But when you impede other people from their liberties, trying to go and seek their interests, get their education, which people are paying a ton of money to get, that's where it's got to stop. Secondarily, the campus is private property. The campus president went through the process of trying to find out and get people to organize and protest in a peaceful manner and not be disruptive of other students. That has not occurred. The last thing is, according to the administration, they believe at least 80%, if not more, of the protesters in this encampment do not go to George Washington University. They're coming in from outside. And I think that's what people are seeing all across the country. It's actually not all of the students who are the core part of these encampments that have propped up. These are outside groups. These are AstroTurf being brought in to create a spectacle around being, whether you want to call it pro-Palestine or supporting Hamas, whatever the case might be. It is massively anti-Semitic. That is what I saw today. Massively anti-Semitic. And that is a serious problem. They don't even allow for dialogue and debate. So if you want to protest peacefully, fine. But you cannot take over institutions to get your point across.
Here's the concern for me. And tell me if you don't share it and where we should focus otherwise. When you say that it's an outside element, you and I both know that happens in these mass protests. You have these people who take advantage, whether they're the anarchists or the Guy Fawkes types. But here, I see it as even more inorganic than most protests. I believe that this is what Christopher Wray at the FBI was talking about months ago, that this is Muslim Brotherhood, toxic Islamism, finding ways to fund, promote, radicalize on social media and on campus. And that's what you're seeing with those non-student agitators that are showing up. Is that an angle of inquiry for the United States Congress?
It is, and I think they're the relevant committees, not just the Oversight Committee, but I also believe the Education Committee, the Ways and Means Committee. There is now, members are looking into the money flow behind these organizations. Where are the dollars coming from? Because if you have groups from overseas, or you have regimes from overseas who are basically funneling money into the university system to stand up these protests, we want to put a stop to that. We do not allow for that to take place in the United States. Furthermore, a lot of these institutions do receive federal funds. And so that's another question that Congress is going to have. But we're looking into this right now. This is not something that we're just going to let just continue with no response whatsoever, using whatever the authorities that the Congress has. But a lot of this goes back to college presidents doing the right thing and protecting all of their students, so all of their students can actually get their education, which is the reason they're there, but then also have the ability to speak freely and not be intimidated by other voices, especially voices that don't go to the university at all.
Right. Byron, thank you for being with us. Representative Donalds, you have a platform here to make the case. This is going to be going on for a while, I think, beyond when school lets out, although I think a lot of air comes out of the balloon at that point. Just please try to get as many people from both sides of the aisle on board. This should not be a partisan issue about what we're about in this country and what we're not. This is a common concern. Thank you for joining us. I'll see you again, and stay safe. All right, now, let's get a different perspective. Cenk Uygur, he's a friend of mine. Okay, he's host of the Young Turks. He says that there is violence, but that we're not calling it straight, and that a pro-Israeli media is fomenting tension, covering for what the reality is. He tweeted this today. Almost everyone in American media hates Muslims and anyone who dares to support them. That certainly doesn't go for me. You will see it with your own eyes, as everyone will make excuses for this vigilante violence. I make no excuses for any violence. Anyone who is violent is not a protester. They are a criminal. As long as they are attacking people who support Muslims, they'll be protected by the media. Again, not the case here. But, Cenk, it's good to have you. Where do you see this being done, and whom do you blame?
Yeah, Chris, look, I've never disagreed with you more than I do today. There's one massive act of violence that has happened in these protests nationwide, and that happened last night at UCLA, when extremist pro-Israel vigilantes attacked the students at UCLA. That was more violence than all of the peace protests combined. Now, do you see wall-to-wall coverage about that? No, my tweet was perfectly accurate. And right now, there's just a lot of cover for that. And instead, what I'm seeing on cable, and I got to be honest with you, Chris, and that's why I said I've never disagreed with you more, this entire setup made it seem like the pro-Palestinian, pro-peace side is the one that's doing the violence, when in fact the biggest violence came from the other side. So what kind of nonsense is this? And then Byron Donalds, his whole life he complained about cancel culture, and I can't believe people are being canceled for having free speech. Now he's going around saying that he wants the government, that's actually a First Amendment issue, the government to clamp down on any protests against Israel. And Chris, let's be honest. Is it the needle or is it the haystack? You find the needle on something you want to attack, something that's 1% or 0.1% of the protests, and then you make it seem like it's the haystack. Oh, my God, they're all terrible anti-Semites who are violent.
Right.
It's absurd on every level. And by the way, Chris, it's what's been done historically to every protest movement, including the Civil Rights Movement, including the Vietnam protests. Oh, I can't believe how they're doing it. Oh, they're doing it in the wrong way. Oh, they're the violent ones. Right. So it's the same exact pattern for the most decent and moral people in America.
I agree that protesters are often painted the wrong way because it's a bad look. Just for whatever it means to you, I have been showing footage of the conflict between the two sides on UCLA since the show started, and I've been showing it this entire segment. So I'm certainly not hiding from it. I see it differently than you, and it doesn't make me anti-Muslim. You know me better than that. I believe that when you have campuses all over the country demonizing Jewish kids and allowed to say whatever they want, control wherever they want, break in, and then ask for catering, it's only a matter of time before you're going to have pushback. And had these campuses had a harder line about how they allowed their private property to be used, you would not have tensions the same way. But, Cenk, this is my bigger concern. I don't think it's about pro-Palestine. I don't think it's about peace. I think, just as Donald's just told you, and we've heard this on many campuses, you've got outside agitators whom I believe are not organic protesters, students who care about suffering. They are Islamist-driven agenda seekers. And they are paying for these protests, and they are fomenting tension, and they are a danger to American national security. They're not just Muslims. They are extreme Islamists.
So, but Chris, I don't know where you're getting this from. Honestly, can you, because if you've got an article, you've got some sort of facts. I mean, hold on. You said that it was Muslim Brotherhood before. You got any facts on that?
Yeah.
I see a foreign government funding almost all of our politicians. That's Israel. And now you guys turn it around and pretend that the foreign forces are actually helping the peace movement?
You think I'm funded by Israel?
Foreign forces help a peace movement. No.
You think I'm funded by Israel?
All politicians are definitely funded by Israel. No, I don't think you are, Chris. Listen to what I'm saying. You know that AIPAC is going to spend $100 million on this election. You know that the number one donor to Joe Biden in his career is AIPAC. Number one donor to Mike Johnson is AIPAC. Number one donor to Hakeem Jeffries is AIPAC.
Wow.
And then to pretend as if Israel is not massively controlling our politicians, and then you think the peace protesters, these kids, are being controlled by Muslim Brotherhood, that's a terrible smear, man. I hope you've got facts to back that up.
Yeah, I do. You know about this California professor who has been studying how to spread these Students for Justice for Palestine and where their money's coming from, and how he's been calling for intifada in America since early 2000, right after 9/11. And let's not forget who was celebrating in this country after 9/11. And I believe that what you see on TikTok with this really inverted ratio, Hatem Bazian.
So, no, brother, first of all, you found one rando, and you think that's your evidence for a worldwide conspiracy?
He's not a rando. Hold on.
Against millions.
I didn't call it a worldwide conspiracy.
You think he's in charge of the millions of protesters in America? Come on, Chris.
I don't think there are millions of protesters.
You found one
I don't think there are millions of protesters.
And you're saying, and what did you mean by who celebrated after 9/11 in this country? That's a Trump-like statement. Who? Tell me who celebrated after 9/11.
Extreme Islamists. That's who.
Yeah, who do you think celebrated after 9/11 in this country?
Extreme Islamists. Extreme Islamists. That's who. Online. Americans.
That's an unbelievable smear.
Show them. What do you mean show them? The protesters don't even want to give their names. But I'm supposed to show you.
You keep saying it as if
20 years ago
it isn't true.
And you saying it's not true doesn't make it not true.
Smearing all of the peace protesters as anti-Semites. You think some rando professors controlling and funding all this stuff. Whereas there's $100 million in AIPAC money right in front of your eyes. And you're like, whoa,
Jake,
I don't see
any AIPAC money. I
bet those politicians don't care about millions of dollars.
I said they're not getting their money's worth.
Okay,
I said
then
AIPAC's not getting their money's worth.
Where's the segment on that?
Because Biden has not been a good friend to Israel. Hakeem Jeffries isn't being a good friend to Israel. You got the whole left flank of the Democratic Party who doesn't even like the definition of anti-Semitism.
Are you kidding me?
They think it's too open-ended.
They just gave them $17 billion to kill more Palestinians. Hey, Chris, are you?
They're giving money.
They just hold on. They just gave him $17 billion.
You're trying to win an argument.
They gave him $17 billion.
Yeah, with the approval of Congress.
For what? That's our money. They gave it to them to murder more Palestinians. And you're telling me that they've been tough on Israel? How? How have they been tough? They gave them gift-wrapped every single thing they wanted in the middle of a slaughter. They slaughtered 25,000 women and children.
You know who disagrees with you? Bibi Netanyahu. How can you not care? We're having a conversation.
Of course he does. He's a monster.
Don't be a bully.
He's a monster.
Listen, but I'm saying, look, Cenk, you want to win an argument. I want to have a conversation that tries to get less of this, what we're seeing, and more aid to the people on the ground in Gaza, more media access to what's happening in Gaza so people can see the reality, which Israel is denying, getting back the hostages, getting rid of Hamas, who is not a legitimate ruling entity for any kind of freedom, any kind of two-state solution, and then you can leverage Israel to get the concessions that are needed with this occupation. That's what I want. So I'm not here to win an argument. I'm here to advance a conversation. You want to win an argument.
No, Chris, that's ridiculous. So you keep saying things that, in my opinion, aren't true, and then when I push back, you say I'm trying to win an argument.
What did I say that's not true? Not that you don't like.
Here's constructive. Okay, you're implying that the protesters are anti-Semitic when you don't have proof of that at all. You're taking at most 0.1% of the protesters and claiming.
That's what I said.
Chris, if I did the same thing and I said, hold on. If I did the same thing and I said those extremist pro-Israel protesters last night at UCLA represents everyone who's pro-Israel, represents anyone who likes Israel, that would be an outrageous libel, right?
I agree.
That's exactly what your guys are doing to the peace protesters.
Hold on, Cenk. I will send you.
How is it not the same thing? They're much more violent.
Cenk, hold on a second, okay? I will send you the introduction. I said, not most, not just some, but a very small slice of people who have extreme views have been an insurgency inside these protests. And they are getting magnified in relevance, just like we see in our party politics, where the angry few get all the attention. That's what I said. If you want to blame other people for what they say, blame them. But that's not my bag. My bag is let the kids protest. The schools shouldn't allow what we're showing on the screen right now. They should have better control. And I want more aid, a better path to peace, which means return the hostages. And that's what I want. But you want me to be an enemy of yours so you can say you're against the media. But I'm no enemy, and you know it.
No.
Last point
Chris,
to you.
That you're not an enemy. And yeah, you're not an enemy. That's not what I'm talking about. You have me on this show. But wall-to-wall media coverage of smearing all those wonderful protesters who are standing up for someone that isn't even in their own group. They're wonderful. And you know what happened?
I agree.
The civil rights movement did not have a permit for crossing the Edmund Pettus Bridge. They didn't have a permit in Selma, Alabama.
This is not the civil rights movement.
Protests. Yes, it is. It is the protest movement to say, stop slaughtering women and children with American dollars because AIPAC paid you to.
And black Americans didn't take a lot.
Definitely
black Americans didn't take
issue.
And black Americans didn't take a bunch of white Americans hostage after going on a murder spree and refused to give them back until they got everything they wanted. Okay? That is not what precipitated the civil rights movement.
Just like the Palestinians are called violent.
They didn't do anything like
civil rights leaders were called violent in the same exact way that these peace protesters were.
Listen, but it wasn't fair. And here, Hamas precipitated October 7th. They wanted everything that followed, and they won't give back the hostages.
Israel did 20 times worse, and you know
that's a non-starter. But if you gave back the hostages, then you'd have the high ground, and they won't. And you need to understand why they won't.
Occupation never ends.
So why don't they give them back and then test the theory?
Hamas would release them.
Nah, you don't.
Because Hamas isn't going to listen to us. I'm not pro-Hamas.
You never say it.
Of course Hamas is terrible. What do you mean? I say that in almost every interview I do, Chris. Everybody always demands that you
not by percentage.
Deny Hamas. I deny Hamas, of course. But then I do it back to you. I demand that you condemn Benjamin Netanyahu as a terrorist that has killed 20 times, 30 times the civilians that Hamas has. So obviously he's 30 times worse terrorist than Hamas. Go ahead. Are you going to condemn Israel and Netanyahu in the same way that I condemn Hamas?
I don't believe that Benjamin Netanyahu, I don't believe that the state of Israel is motivated to eradicate all Gazans the way Hamas is.
They accidentally murdered 25,000 women and children.
I think Netanyahu has overstepped. I think he has courted a malignant aspect of the right of the Israeli political spectrum. I think that he's overreached. I think that his time is over. Of course, that's not my place to say. I'm not an Israeli. But he's got them in a box because they can't hold elections right now. But I think that he is absolutely part of the problem. Cenk, I got to jump. I appreciate the conversation. I'll always continue it no matter what you beat me over the head with because I believe in the conversation.
Thank you.
All right? 4 minutes, 5 seconds. Coming up. And I know you guys still think that's weird. Listen, I don't care how people treat me. I'll push back. I can defend myself. I believe in the conversation. All right? It doesn't matter if I don't agree with everything. You're going to see that again in the next segment with Bill O'Reilly. But the conversation matters. As long as both sides get to speak, you get to process it. You get to have better ideas for yourself. That's all I care about. Conversation is the cure. O'Reilly says he knows why these protests are happening. and he's going to take it on next. Campus uprisings happening. Why? Top Republicans are trying to say it's about anti-Semitism. They're going to do something about it. But what is underlying it? What is our real concern here? Let's bring in Bill O'Reilly. How do you see it, sir?
Well, first of all, I have to recover from the previous segment. That was like watching Fantasia on speed. So
what does that mean?
When you book guests who are just, that means that it was wildly out of control. When you book guests that are not going to be convinced, no matter what you present to them, they're going to believe what they want to believe, then you get a merry-go-round. So here's the story. I wrote a column on BillO'Reilly.com on Sunday called The Treachery Behind the Protests. The group that is funding and that you cited and that he almost panicked when you mentioned the name is Students for Justice for Palestine, founded in 1993, Berkeley, California. All right, Dr. Hatim Bazian is the head of it. They are the organizers of all of the protests across the country. They are funded by the American Muslims for Palestine, very deep-pocketed, do get money from overseas, and the Westchester People's Action Coalition in New York, which funded the Columbia stuff, courtesy of George Soros. So that's the money pipeline coming in. And how it works is that the Students for Justice for Palestine has a database of campus activists, all left-wing activists. And they can email them and coalesce them very, very quickly. Get out here, meet there, do this. It's no accident all the tents at Columbia look the same. What did they go into Home Depot to buy the tents before? Come on. They were shipped in. So were the printed signs. And so that people need to know that this is organized. It isn't like Vietnam. And it's a sliver of college students. A sliver. I got 2 kids in college. They're not going through any of this. Okay. Then you go to the Harvard-Harris poll out yesterday, which says 80% of Americans support Israel over Hamas, which is the logical position. Because Hamas, as we all know, attacked Israel, slaughtered civilians, raped civilians, and Hamas has to be destroyed. We did, the United States did the same thing in World War II. We firebombed Tokyo, we firebombed Dresden, we killed hundreds of thousands of civilians because the Tojo regime and Hitler had to be destroyed. It's exactly the same thing. Now, I'm not justifying any death for civilians, but I am telling you, when you have a terror group that can come in at any time and slaughter thousands of your citizens, you have got to root out the terror group. And the only way to do that is through violence. And the far left doesn't want that because it hates Israel. Some of them are anti-Semitic. Others attach it to the United States, which is despised by the far left progressive movement. So that is really what is going on here. Most college kids aren't anti-Semitic. They just want to take their finals and go home for the summer, which is what will happen, by the way. The story's got about a week left. And by the way, UCLA, so you ought to hang around NewsNation. That's going to happen in about an hour. So the police are going to go in, dismantle the construction, arrest the 300 in there. None of them will be prosecuted, just like the 283 arrested in New York. Alvin Bragg's not going to prosecute any one of them. No one. They'll all be dismissed. You wait and see.
One pivot point here, and I appreciate your comments at this point. Look, you and I have a fundamental disagreement about what the way forward is. I believe in conflictual conversation. I have seen in my audience, I have seen in the reaction that it's better than just preaching to the converted and bringing on people who are too stupid to battle back with me, so I just win every argument. I believe in it. I believe people are sophisticated enough. I believe people are sophisticated enough to get something from it. But that's stylistic fundamentally, philosophical also.
All right.
My concern here, Bill, is this. I think that if you are able to affect the young, bright, highly educated people, it is a sign of a true vulnerability to radicalism and fundamentalism. And as a student of history, this doesn't only smack of Germany in 1938. This smacks of what happened in Iran in the 70s, where fundamentalists came in and changed a culture by starting with the students. And are you concerned that this is the beginning of radicalization in America?
I'm concerned about radicalization in America, certainly. Okay, but I'm more concerned about poor leadership across the board, from Biden down to the college presidents. Look, this isn't like 1938 Germany. Most college kids don't want any part of this. They're not anti-Semitic. They don't even understand what's going on. Most of the protesters don't understand the issue. That doesn't concern me. The lack of leadership does. Get the most powerful Jewish American in the country, Chuck Schumer, the senator, majority leader, took him 13 days to issue a statement. Why? Because he's afraid of the progressive left, which is driving all of this. Biden still hasn't issued a statement. His dopey spokesperson today embarrassed herself again by saying, oh, President Biden is very strong against anti-Semitism. Look, lady, the guy is the president. He should have been out on day 2 saying this has got to stop. Then you got the college presidents who are absurd. Look, the University of Florida is a big school. Ben Sasse runs it. Sasse comes out day 1 and says, you violate university rules, you're expelled. Okay,
yeah,
that's
Vanderbilt
it.
Did the same thing.
That's it. Okay.
A lot of Southern
schools. So where are
did.
these other pinheads? They're responsible for this. These poor leaders, politically correct, woke people who have no spine and who allow people to be injured. And the final point I want to make is the progressive left, which drives this protest across the country, wants public disorder. We saw it after George Floyd. They want chaos and anarchy. Today is May Day, all right? Happy communism. In Ireland, and I was just there, all the anti-Semitic signs that are all over Belfast are sponsored by the Irish Communist and Socialist Party. All right? So that's what's happening. Now, you can debate that guy for 18 minutes straight. You'll never get that kind of clarity that I just gave you, ever. So
but
if
it's
you
only
want
one side of the
Fantasia
conversation.
on steroids, go.
No, I want to engage both sides. Bill O'Reilly, thank you very much. I appreciate you for being here. I wish it were as simple as one version says everything and means everything.
It's not, but it's a fact-based story. I sent you a not woke mug. Did you get the not woke mug?
I do. I have it.
Okay.
I have it.
And I'm sending one to every protester. Okay.
Thank you. Bill O'Reilly, appreciate you. 4 minutes, 30 seconds. When we come back, Harvey Weinstein was in court today. His New York rape conviction was overturned. He's going to be retried. What does that look like? What does it mean for his conviction in Los Angeles? His lawyer, the redoubtable Arthur Aidala, joins us with a very seasoned former prosecutor to discuss the plus minus. Sentence, why? Because he didn't do it? No. It was about how the trial was conducted, that the judge allowed jurors to see and hear too much evidence not directly related to what Weinstein was charged with. Now, the California case has different state evidence rules in terms of what's allowed in. So what does this mean for the two cases? Harvey Weinstein's defense attorney is the OAO one and only Arthur Aidala, who joins us now. We're also joined by former sex crimes prosecutor Matt Murphy. Aidala is so important that he's sitting where I usually sit on my set. Arthur, thank you very much. What do you believe this means? You're only handling the New York case, right? Not the LA one?
Correct, but I'm very much in touch, and she was in court today, Jennifer Bogine, who's handling the appeal out in California. And the reason why we're hopeful about the appeal out in California, even though what you said is correct, there is different rules of evidence regarding that type of evidence, that propensity evidence coming in. At the trial in LA, the jurors were made aware that Mr. Weinstein was a convicted felon, that Mr. Weinstein had been convicted of crimes in New York, and that's no longer the case. And I mean, there are a lot of other evidentiary rulings, or the prejudicial value versus the probative value, that were already up on appeal. But you throw in there now that jurors heard that, oh, by the way, the guy you're judging has already been convicted of doing it before. I think that calls for a new trial in LA.
Do you believe that you have a better chance the second time around in New York when the facts themselves haven't changed?
But, Chris, I hate to correct you, but the facts...
No, you don't.
No, I do. The facts have actually changed tremendously. In the first case, he was charged with a complaining witness named Annabella Sciorra. She was an actress. He was charged with rape in the first degree, mandatory life in prison count. He was found fully acquitted of those 2 counts. So that's off the table. Jessica Mann, who you mentioned, he was charged with rape in the first degree. The jury came back and said not guilty. So with Jessica Mann, he's only facing rape in the 3rd degree, of which he's already done the maximum amount of time in jail. So even if we went to trial on that count alone and he was convicted, he still walks out the back door with the rest of us. It's really the Mimi Haley count, which is the sexual assault count, is really the one that he could still stand trial for.
Point taken and appreciated. Brother Murphy, how do you see it?
Well, he wouldn't exactly walk out the back door with the rest of us, right, Arthur? He still faces 16 years in California, if I'm not mistaken. So this is actually a really interesting issue, Chris. In California, we have what's called 1108 evidence. And as a former sexual assault prosecutor, we used to use that all the time, which essentially is prior bad act evidence, which is what basically the judge allowed in New York. But there's no statute in the state of New York that allows him to do that. So among other problems in that case, in the New York case, they reversed it for that. It's not coming back in California based on the inadmissible admission of those same prior bad acts. So this is actually a really interesting thing. I predict that if he is acquitted on this, and I bet Arthur might agree with me on this, I think the New York legislature is going to take a hard look at possibly passing legislation making New York law more like California law.
But that wouldn't affect Weinstein.
No, it would not affect him. But here's another thing, is that if it does come back, even if it is reversed in California, it ain't coming back on the 1108 evidence, which means all of these women theoretically would be fair game to testify in a second LA case. But I think we're a long way from seeing that happen.
Well, Chris, let me just tell you why, if I may. Arthur. The reason why I'm going to disagree about having that kind of evidence, that propensity evidence as a law here in New York is, of the 4 women, he was only charged with 3, Chris. The judge allowed 4 other women to come in and say, it happened to me too, me too, me too. Only one of them was put to the test, Lauren Young. She went to trial in LA, and guess what the verdict was? Not guilty. So that's the point. You can't be convicted on rumors. You can't be convicted on women who've never gone to the grand jury. You know what? If they really were complainants, let them go to the police, let them go to a detective, let them file charges, let them go to the grand jury, let them be indicted on it. Don't let them just pop up out of nowhere without going through the whole process and say, oh, I'm going to walk in the day of trial and say, oh yeah, he's a bad guy. He did it to me too.
Arthur Aidala, I appreciate you coming in. We're going to be following this every step of the way. You have an open invitation. Matt Murphy, thank you very much for helping shape our perspective on what the issues are here. Appreciate you both.
Chris.
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you,
3
Joe.
minutes, 45 seconds. Up next, it's time for you to have your say. What do you think about the issues we're taking on and how we're taking them on? 844-968-7720. Let's get after it. All right, Dusty, who do you got?
Okay, we're going to start with Luis from Tacoma. I'm not going to say it right. She's from Florida.
What's your question? Hello? Next.
Alyssa, please. Alyssa.
Next.
Alyssa, please.
Hello?
Okay, so anyway, I can tell you what they were going to say. I'm going to tell you what Louise was going to say because she had a very good question. She said, let's take all these kid protesters, get them on a plane, and take them to Israel, to Hamas area so they can see what it's really like. So clearly she's fed up with these kids.
Look, you can be fed up with the kids, but you got to be careful not to make some into all, okay? There are a lot of these kids who are doing exactly what we want them to. They're voicing their passion and their upset Jonathan. And their outrage. And that's okay, and that's allowed. There are some who are supporting really malignant ideas. There are some who are being fed those ideas. There are some who are infiltrating the legitimate protests for their own agendas. And that's what I'm worried about the most, okay? I don't want to send them anywhere. Yes, it's true. These LGBTQ plus kids who are supporting Hamas, to the extent that that's true, yeah, Hamas would see killing them as an honor killing. Absolutely. It's a terrible cult. You have a call now or no?
Let's go to Alyssa from Minnesota. Alyssa, I hope you're there.
All right. Alyssa, do you exist and have a question? How you doing?
I do. I'm great. Thanks, Chris. What about the hostages? This is all I'm asking. All these protests, I haven't seen one image of a hostage, not one talk of a hostage release, not one conversation about the hostages until you just brought it up from that guy who's trying to spin it into a peace protest? No.
Right.
What about the hostages?
I'm with you. I'm with you. I think they're the starting point, not just because they're Americans who've been taken, but you can't expect anybody to back off before you give their people back. Oh, but they've killed too many. Give them back, and then you can blame what they're doing about it. There is no country who would let you take their people and then say, okay, we'll back off, even though you're not giving them back. It's not realistic. And look, the reason I disagree with Bill O'Reilly, one, Bill likes to hear himself, right? Let's be honest. He's the smartest guy in the room. Just ask him. For me, I believe in conversation. I don't believe it's a merry-go-round. I don't believe because somebody is disagreeing with me, it means that nobody can keep up because everybody's so stupid. I don't believe you're stupid. I think you're smart. I think you're confused and disillusioned by everyone selling you things. And what I want to do is just let you see what is in the buffet and test different plates. And then you decide what is food for thought for you. That's how I want to do this. That's why I brought up the hostages with Cenk, because he isn't talking about the hostages. He's not talking about how Hamas sucks and is a terror organization. Why? Because he believes that Israel is wrong. So he is shaping his arguments to win the argument. I don't give a damn about the argument. I want the suffering to stop. That means give back the hostages. That means get rid of the terrorist organization that has its boot on the neck of the people in Gaza. And then you say to Israel, this is not your land. Move back on the settlements. You don't get to run this place. They run themselves. That's when you get to do it. I'll take a break. Final thought right after this.